The MMQB.com's Albert Breer joins us here on The Fan. Albert, how are we doing today?
Good. How you guys doing?
We're good. I promise you Nick is not dodging you after you dog-walked him on your podcast earlier last week. He's just under the weather, I swear.
No. Well, that was fun, actually. I don't know. I feel like with this whole story, I'm kind of like stuck in crazy town right now. So it's but you know what? That's sort of what it is. I turned First Take on Monday. So you have this great Sunday of NFL action or whatever, and like all these really important games. And of course, I look at the Chiron. I'm actually doing my own podcast, and I think it's like, what does Shedeur need to do to prove to Stefanski he needs to be the starter or something? It's just like, oh my God, I can't believe it's where we are. But hey, the Browns are a national story now, I guess.
We knew we'd always get there, Albert, but it is an interesting way of getting there. And so, all right, let me ask you, last week you were critical. This week, how do you feel about Shedeur and the discourse?
I think the discourse is still, like, that bleep crazy. But, like, I think you saw some things where you want to see more. You know, like, sort of my thought coming out of it was, first of all, that's a bad Raiders team, and the defense carried you, and great. You know what I mean? Like, I think that part of it shouldn't be forgotten. Myles Garrett was unbelievable and is the defensive player of the year and could break the sack record, which shouldn't be forgotten in all of this. But, just as far as Shedeur in a vacuum, like, I think you saw a few things that, like, would make you want to get a second look and see it against a better opponent and give them another week in practice, and now you build and you see where you can go with it. You know, I think I've said this a few times to you guys. I don't think the quarterback for next year is on the roster right now. And you have runway with Shedeur where he's under contract for another 3 years. So, again, there are obviously some things that didn't go right in the game for him. There are a few things that did go right. I think you saw that he brought some juice. And, the throw to Bond was a highlight, of course. You know, he makes another couple throws where he buys time. You know, the one to Jeudy that Jeudy wound up fumbling. You know, that's, you see some instincts and some ability to extend a play there. So, yeah, I mean, there are a few things. I'm not going to go crazy with it, but I think, like, it makes you want to see, like, a little bit more. So, we'll see a little bit more this week and see where it takes us.
Albert, did the Browns blow it waiting this long to get to Shedeur, and considering the only reason Shedeur is on the field right now is because Dillon Gabriel suffered that concussion and earned this extra start this week?
I mean, that's hard to say, Daryl, because I just think, again, like, the players know. You know what I mean? Like, and if this were some sort of obvious thing, like, I think it would have happened earlier because the players would have made it known what was going on and made it uncomfortable for the coaches, because if you're deficient in the most important position on the field, that's going to make things harder for everybody, And so, I don't know, like, the sense I got just paying attention to it was that the Browns players believed, in the moment that Dillon Gabriel was the best option for them. Now, like, I think, with Shedeur given the chance to start, some of the things that they saw him doing around the facility over the course of last week made them feel a lot better about him being the starter, for last week. And then he does a few things in the game, and you want to see a little bit more, and we'll see where it goes. You know what I mean? Like, I just think it's one of those things, like, I mean, look, like, and you were at camp, if this were, like, overly obvious, like, oh, my God, we got to get him on the field, he would have been on the field by now. Like, I don't think there's some grand conspiracy to keep him off the field, but, like, sometimes, like, guys get opportunities in different ways and do something with the opportunity. And I think, to Shedeur's credit, like, he had a good week of practice last week. He did extra, to try to get himself and the guys around him ready to play with him. And, I think some of that showed up on Sunday. So now, he's created another opportunity for himself. We'll see what he does with it.
Yeah, Albert, I read your mailbag yesterday that you dropped. Can you let the listeners in and give some of the insight, especially as it relates to Joel Bitonio and the conversations you had with Joel Bitonio about some of the extra work that Shedeur was getting throughout the week?
Yeah, so, like, Joel said that, like, and obviously he's the longest tenured Brown, and I don't need to tell you guys probably, I don't know, Daryl, most respected player in the locker room, right up there,
yeah,
right? Like,
that's fair. And, yeah, that's fair. Not only respected in the locker room, but respected by folks like me that cover the team.
Yeah, so, like, I think, like, you know, for Joel to say that, like, hey, I came in at 7 a.m. to lift, and I looked out there, and there's Shedeur walking through with some of the younger offensive players, he said that was really good. Like, he didn't, like, necessarily expect to see that, but that was something that Shedeur was doing when no one told him to do it. And he saw it again on Thursday and again on Friday, you know. And so I think it's, like, a good sign of, like, he knows where he's at, and, you know, he knew the opportunity in front of him, and he knew that it would be good not just for him but for the other guys to get the extra work in, so they get that extra work in. And, you know, I don't know if he had to be told to do it, but it seems like that was self-motivated, you know what I mean? Like, so all of that's good. Like, that's what you want to see out of somebody at that position. And, you know, it was good to hear that, too, because I do think it shows, like, all right, like, I understand, like, this opportunity is in front of me, and, you know, if I go out there and it doesn't look good, then they're probably going to go right back to Dylan. So I got to do everything I can to create another opportunity for myself. And he went and did it. That's a huge credit to him.
You mentioned some of the coverage and conversation around Shedeur, and I, by the way, 100% agree with you. I think it's gone crazy. But do you think Shedeur's largely misunderstood in the media sphere as far as, like, his personality? He's just always been positive and energetic in my interactions with him. That seems to be what he is behind the scenes when nobody's looking. And yet it seems to be a lot of the media want to weaponize that persona against him and accuse him of being braggadocious or disrespectful or not humble. We heard that from Eric Mangini, who, oh, by the way, wasn't humble enough to hire a legitimate GM here in Cleveland when he was the head coach, but he's going to tell me about Shedeur needing to be more humble. But, like, do you think he's like Shedeur because he's just so popular in the social sphere and is just has that outgoing, happy personality that's being weaponized against him a little bit?
You know, that's an interesting question, Daryl. I would say, you know, I think part of the problem is, and look, like, I don't think he's, like, overly arrogant. I don't think, like, there's an intentional, I don't think there's, like, an intention by him to come off that way, right? I just think, like, a huge piece of this is, like, kind of the environment he grew up in. And, like, I think some of these guys who become really famous when they're very young have some, like, child star syndrome. You know what I mean? Like, where, like, they maybe don't fully understand, like, how they come off, you know? And, like, so, for example, like, there were all those rumors, I'm sure you guys remember from Colorado, where, like, he was going to games separate from the team, right? Or, like, there were all these different things about, like, all this different stuff that was going on. And I'm not sure Shedeur ever knew, like, he was doing something wrong. Like, I think he just kind of, like, that's been the life that he's lived because of who he is. And so I think sometimes with some of these guys, there can be a little bit of a lack of self-awareness, and that came off in the pre-draft process. And I don't think any of it is evil or dark or anything like that. But I could just tell you, you know, from some of the people who dealt with him, like, he just had an air about him that he'd arrived. And again, like, I don't even know that that's his fault. Like, I just think that there's, like, a little bit of that. Like, I've been famous since, you know, I'm the son of a famous, of one of the most famous football players ever to put a pair of cleats on. And I've grown up in this environment where I've always been the biggest name and I've always been the show, and, like, carries himself that way. And I think sometimes there's a little bit of, like, are you even aware of the way that you're coming off? You know, and I always think about this with quarterbacks, right? I've said this to both Pat Mahomes and Josh Allen. Like, I think the intangible capital that those guys got from being in, like, a golf cart at the match, right, with a case of Coors Light in the back, like, it was incalculable, right? Like, those guys, like, still come off as normal people, and that can be so key to playing the quarterback position. And that's what you want, right? Like, you want, like, Brady was this way. Brady had a great way of toggling between, like, celebrity Tom Brady was at the Met Gala and then just being a normal guy in the locker room. And, like, eventually that got harder for him, but at least at the beginning he came off as a very normal guy. And, I just think, like, with Shedeur, maybe sometimes he doesn't realize the way he comes off, and hopefully some of that comes with age. But I've never got the sense that he's, like, a bad guy or anything like that. I just think sometimes there's a lack of self-awareness because he grew up differently than the way most athletes grow up.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned the match that they play, because every time I see a Coors Light can, I just think of Mahomes calling it birdie juice. And it's like little things like that just stay with you, Albert. Yeah.
I mean, like, but doesn't it, like, as wealthy and powerful and successful as Mahomes becomes, he still comes off like a kid from East Texas, doesn't he?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Like, Josh Allen still comes off like the guy from the farm. Joe Burrow still comes off. I mean, Joe Burrow comes off like half my college friends, like the kids from Ohio. You know what I mean? Like, I just think, like, a lot of the guys who reach, I mean, Lamar Jackson is so authentically himself, right? And, like, doesn't come off as, like, a multi-million-dollar athlete. Like, and I just think at that position, there's, like, a microscope on those sorts of things. And sometimes you have to work hard to come off a certain way. And I just think with Shedeur, sometimes there can be a little bit of self-awareness that he could gain, and maybe he'll gain it with age, that doesn't exist because of the environment he grew up in. Again, that's not necessarily, like, maybe it's not fair that people judge him on that, because it's just kind of like his reality. But I do think that that's maybe part of some of the disconnect. I don't know, Daryl, you're in there every day, but maybe that's like part of the disconnect between the way he's perceived and who he is.
Albert Breer joining us here on The Fan. All right, last one with Shedeur, and then we got a couple other things I want to get to, obviously. But yeah, you have a lot of people that you've talked to throughout the 9 months we've been doing a lot of Shedeur discourse, and it felt like some of them were more negative than positive, let's say. Did any of those people that maybe had doubts or casted anything, again, it's just a game and a half, you can't make any declarations, but did they watch Sunday and say to themselves, ooh, that was better than I thought it was going to be?
I mean, I got to be honest with you. I just haven't asked enough people, like a couple people here and there. But, like, it'd be unfair for me to, like, cast anything based on one person's opinion or the other. I assume if I asked around, I mean, I think, like, if you ask around, a lot of people would tell you, based on, like, just a little bit that I've heard, that there was some good and some bad, and really maybe not. He looks good, but there wasn't a whole lot of new information that they got from the Raiders game. Like, there's still, the bad habits, some of the bad habits are still there. Some of the playmaking ability you saw at Colorado's there now. Like, let's see him grow. I think the one positive is it didn't seem like he was as much of a sitting duck in this game as maybe he was at times against the Rams in the preseason, or in that in the second half against the Ravens. So I personally noticed a little growth there. But, I think you got to let this thing kind of breathe and see it over a couple of weeks, which to me is why, like, now – he's earned the right. Like, I think you just give him a little runway and see where he takes it.
Myles Garrett, kind of good this year. Up to 18 sacks, had 3 more. 4.5 shy of the single-season sack record. What are folks saying about him around the NFL, even though he's playing for a 3-win Browns team?
Yeah, I mean, he's just otherworldly. I mean, there was a play. And then, look, I think it was against Stone Forsythe, so whatever, but, like, there was a play on Sunday, and you guys can probably pick it out and remember it, because I think I've got so much jumbled in my head after these weekends. But there was a play that was like, I mean, it looked like the biggest mismatch I've ever seen in all my years of covering the NFL. Like, he ran right by him. Like, it was like, holy crap. Like, this is like Derrick Henry high school tape type of stuff here, and so he's just playing at such an incredible level and with such incredible consistency. And I think I did my midseason poll a few weeks ago, and he was the defensive player of the year despite playing on a team that's well out of contention. I think there's all the respect in the world across the NFL for Myles Garrett. And the only question, I think, is, like, is he ever going to have a chance to compete for a championship?
But look, like, I don't think anybody needs to tell anybody what a great player he is. I mean, he will, you don't say Hall of Fame lock with very many guys, because it's such a hard process voting those guys in, and there's a high bar to get into Canton. But, he's one of the few where you can say, yeah, 5 years after his career, he's going to be putting on a gold jacket.
Jerry Jeudy last Wednesday had a minute and a half press conference. That's all it lasted. No answer was more than 5 words. He then went into the game Sunday. You referenced the fumble already, but a lot of Browns fans they're just done with Jerry Jeudy. It's amazing the amount of calls and tweets we've gotten this week where people are just like, we're done with Jerry. We want nothing to do with him. What has happened here with the Browns this year? I almost feel bad for him with the lack of quarterbacks around him, Albert, but something has changed with Jerry. We're getting the end-of-time Denver Broncos Jerry Jeudy.
Yeah, I think that's sort of the risk, right? Like, part of the reason why, Sean Payton makes that trade, when he makes that trade, is because they were reworking the culture. And, it's a little surprising because this is a guy who did come out of Nick Saban's program at Alabama and was highly regarded there, was part of that receiver group with Devontae Smith and Henry Ruggs. He was always a little bit of a different guy, like a South Florida guy and all that. But certainly, Sean Payton saw some things where, when they're reworking that roster, he didn't fit what they were trying to do the same way that Cortland Sutton fit what they were trying to do. And, I think a huge piece of it is how he's going to react when he's hit with adversity. And obviously, if you're a receiver playing for the Cleveland Browns this year, you've been hit with a bunch of adversity because your quarterback situation is unstable. The offensive line's been a problem. And, if you're worried about your numbers or your own personal performance, there's going to be a lot of frustration you're dealing with. So I'd say it's all those things rolled into one. I just think, it feels to me at least like he's maybe one of these guys that goes as the wind blows. Like if things are going well, he won't be a problem. But if things aren't, you might get a different version of him.
All right, Albert, do Jeremiah Smith and Carnell Tate, do they play this weekend? And what's the score, 75-0, 75-3?
I hope so. I hope it's 75-0 with a couple of minutes left, and then we score again.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about.
I'm talking like old school Woody Hayes. I went for 2 because I couldn't go for 3. I think Michigan. I think Michigan will be able to keep it close for a little while. I think Matt Patricia, who I know a lot of people are surprised what a good job he's done. I'm not sure what a true freshman, an 18-year-old quarterback is going to look like in that environment against that coordinator with 4 or 5 first-round picks on the field. You know what I mean? So I tend to think is our offense going to go crazy? I think Michigan can play. I think Michigan can play good defense against us. But I don't see how Michigan's going to be able to score with us. And so, I think if Ohio State scores 17 points, we're fine. And my guess would be, all right, so I would just tell you guys right now, I feel pretty good that Jeremiah Smith's going to play. I'd be very surprised if he doesn't play. Carnell, I think, is a little bit more of a day-to-day thing, but I know they're trying to get him out there.
All right, Albert. Enjoy the game. We'll talk to you next week. Enjoy the happy Thanksgiving as well. Daryl, we got accused of jinxing him earlier. I went a little overboard last year as 21.5 point favorites, and so I feel like I'm just going to recuse myself from the conversation because last year I did nobody any favors that way. I said you could be asleep by halftime and all this other stuff, and I was made to look like a fool at the end of it.
Albert, I'm wearing my red Ohio State hoodie right now. I'm not going to lie, a little nervous. I will not be wearing any of my Buckeye apparel that I have worn each of the last 4 years. During this particular
Albert,
game,
I like your read on it.
And I have like a red Script Ohio hoodie that I bought last year after the Michigan game because I did not want to wear anything that I had worn the last few years for the Michigan game, and that red hoodie got us to 4-0, and we're 15-0 since I bought that hoodie. So I think that maybe that's what I'll be rocking on Saturday.
All right, Albert.
And Brady Quinn accused me of being the mush, and I will not be at the game either, like I was last year. I can show you guys a picture of me at the game last year. I'm the most miserable looking person on the face of the earth. But I reminded him that Notre Dame is 0-3 with me in the stadium, which now they're 1-3 because I took my kids to BC Notre Dame a couple of weeks ago. But my stomach's in knots but I'd be surprised if we don't win.
Enjoy the game, and happy Thanksgiving. Thanks, Albert.
All right, happy Thanksgiving to you and everybody out there in Cleveland, all right?
All right, thank you so much. Albert Breer right there on the Fan Hotline.